Hi, this is Rabbi David Katz, broadcasting live from Jerusalem. All right, we put out a little interview video yesterday, I think on Wednesday. The interview was done a couple days before that. In the video was conducted by a good friend, Michael Clark, and it was first time that he had interviewed me, and we were interviewing just kind of a get to know me. I'm in a new stage in life, as I spoke about in the video. I went through marriage. Got married after being a widower for many years, and I lost a lot of weight, a lot of personal growth, and developed my website, getsoulstrong.com, and all my content has been limited to the website, kind of going off the radar for about a year, working on, again, my site, my content, my personal growth, my personal life. Things have never been better, and that's what the interview was about. And one of the questions that I get asked all the time about my weight loss, I lost 65 kilos in about 6 months. So the first question people want to know is, did I get surgery? The answer is no. In that case, if I didn't get surgery, how did I lose the weight? And I tell people very simply, I use Torah methodology in my weight loss. Meaning all of the spiritual tools that I learned in particularly my Noahide, i.e. gear work. Noahide meaning Torah for the non-Jews. I don't call it Noahide, I call it Ger Toshav. Primarily when people ask me in Jerusalem what I do for a living, I say I'm a rabbi. They say, what do you mean? I say I teach online. They say, what do you teach? I say 7 laws of Noah. Because most people are not even aware of what Ger Toshav means, at least on a very layman level. To them, it's more of an esoteric concept that appears, let's say, once in a while in their learning. So I say I teach non-Jews 7 laws of Noah online. And they say, wow, that's so interesting, da, da, da. And then I say, well, really, as I look at it, from my point of view, I teach Ger Toshav, which is the righteous non-Jew that takes a personal oath or Kabbalah of the 7 laws and rejects Shituf. That's what I teach. Noahide is actually something very different. Noahide does not believe in rejecting Shituf, and Noahide can actually practice Shituf. So even though the general term that we're all kind of in the non-Jewish world is generally regarded as Noahide or B'nai Noach to the layman, me personally, I don't teach Noahide. I'm not involved in Noahide. I'm involved with Ger Toshav, or biblically it's called Ger. And again, I've been involved with Ger for a long time. Again, if you ever hear me mention the word Noahide, it's just to refer to a broad general audience. I think even the people that identify as Ger Toshav will oscillate and call themselves B'nai Noach or Noahide to someone that just doesn't know anything about the field. Because most people are familiar with the term Noahide, even though they don't know what it means. And in truth, it doesn't mean anything. It's not a translation of B'nai Noach. B'nai Noach is actually a term I would prefer to use if I'm going to speak generally. And even B'nai Noach has several meanings. Whereas Ger Toshav, even though it has several meanings, it could be a resident alien, a righteous non-Jew. In my specific work, I definitely am teaching the concept of Ger Toshav as opposed to B'nai Noach or Noahide, because I'm teaching one who is careful with the 7 laws and rejects Shituf, understands the nature of Kabbalah as in personal oath, not as in the spirituality. And again, those that know my work know how I stand on these things. Another term that you could use, which the Rambam uses, and which is a source of much debate, is the Chasidi Omos Ha'olam, the pious of the nations. Generally, the terms Ger Toshav or biblical Ger are, I guess, the same cloth as Chasidi Omos Ha'olam. It's just that the Chasidi Omos Ha'olam is pious of the nations, is a term coined by the Rambam, which is a Rishon, a medieval rabbi, whereas Ger is biblical and Ger Toshav is the accepted Chazal terminology for such a righteous non-Jew. So again, I tell people that in my weight loss, I did it by using Torah terminology, Torah concepts, Torah everything. And the example I'll give you specifically is when I found out that 3,500 calories burned is 1 pound lost. So all the people in the diet world will say 3,500 divided by 7, as in 7 days of the week, is 500. If you are in a caloric deficit of 500 calories a day, in 1 week you will lose a pound. And I said to myself, all right, let's call that Lefi Pshuto. Meaning, let's look at it for what it is, without having any thought invested in it. If I eat 6,000 calories a day, by this thinking, and then I just cut back 500, that's a caloric deficit of 500, so I'm eating 5,500 calories a day, I should lose a pound a week. And again, it's a point of ridiculousness because I realize, okay, so obviously you can't lose weight despite the caloric deficit. You must add another variable. So if your calories are 5,000, but you cut back 500, you're still not going to lose weight. But if I bring that 5,000 down to a number of, let's say, 2,500, I cut my caloric intake in half as the bulk of the diet, and on top of that, another 500 calories deficit. So I'm already going from the hamburger, the fries, the Coke 3 times a day, from 5,000 to 2,500. I'm eating pretty healthy, and on top of that, cut out 500 more. Or instead of the soda, have water. Instead of a lot of sugar, have next to no sugar. And you make those sacrifices to 500, you will lose a pound a week. I did that, and I lost about 1 kilo a week. I was averaging the bulk of my diet about 1,300 to 1,500 calories a day. And you see, it's a physical reality that I'm describing, physical weight loss. You see the before and the after pictures. You see my health statistics, my BMI, my blood pressure. Everything is as hard fact, physical and tangible as possible. Unarguable, no room for opinions. This guy either lost weight or didn't lose weight. He either lost weight in a healthy way, sustainable way, or it was a crash fad diet. The point I made in my interview was everything I did in the weight loss was absolutely physical, provable, factual, non-metaphysical, non-spiritual, very physical, lifting weights, changing your diet. Everything was fact. Nobody can say, well, I disagree with his weight loss. Unless you want to say I got surgery, which people will obviously try to do, to downplay how one can make such a profound change in their life of losing 60 to 65 kilos in about half a year's time. But it is a provable fact. Torah is not provable fact in any way, shape, or form. Take the word and very beginning word of the Torah, Genesis, Bereshit. Bereshit in Hebrew. Every art scroll will translate Bereshit as in the beginning. Does it mean in the beginning? You could argue already it doesn't mean in the beginning, Bereshit. It means Bereshit, with Reshit, with firstness. Every word in the Torah becomes debatable because it is spiritual, which by definition, spiritual means metaphysical. It becomes abstract, and this is why there's never going to be a provable level of Torah. Not in something as complex as Ger, even though Ger is not that complex. It is a very halachic, grounded, even physical concept within the spiritual world. And then there's super esoterical things, like the nature of Kabbalistic meditation, names of God, all of these sort of things. Torah cannot be provable on the same way that a physical weight loss is provable. There is always going to be somebody with an opinion, an opposing opinion, an argument, a debate, compare and contrast. This is the nature of Torah, and specifically the oral Torah. When we come to a halacha, a grounded, physical, hard-wired Torah fact, even in halacha, it cannot be provable. Because there's variables that one can state within halacha that produce more debate, more thinking, more introspection, more meditation, and more wisdom coming out of it. Let's take an example. There's a halacha in Torah Judaism, Rabbinic Torah Judaism, to put your right shoe on first. Very clear, clean concept. What if I say that there's a situation that I can't put my right shoe on first? Let's say I have surgery on my right foot. I today cannot put my right shoe on first, for whatever reason, medical reasons. What is the now prescribed way of putting my shoes on if I cannot proceed to put my right shoe on first? Do I have permission to put my left shoe on first? I actually don't know this halacha, and I don't know if it's ever been discussed. But you can already see that there could be a debate in mind with this halacha. Do we put our left shoe on first? Do we still make an attempt to loosely put our right shoe on first? And people will have opinions this way, people will have opinions that way. There will never be a unanimous decision what is the halacha in such a case. Even though there is a unanimous halacha in right shoe goes on first, there are always aspects of a unanimous objective truth in Torah and particularly halacha. Take ger. Everybody knows that there's one type of ger toshav. There's a resident alien, a righteous non-Jew taking on the 7 laws, living in the land of Israel in a time of Jubilee. Very clear, lefi pshuto, unarguable reality. But within that halacha itself, there are arguments. Does every non-Jew have to take on the 7 laws as a ger toshav? Do they have to pay taxes? There's many laws in that are objectable and debatable because it is metaphysical. There are physical elements to it that cannot be debatable, and there are metaphysical debates to it which are highly debatable. Everything in Torah, even though it has non-debatable physical elements, there's always a metaphysical debatable element that comes inside. Again, I must put my right shoe on first, but there are arguable, debatable points. Weight loss is undeniable. It is a physical fact, and you can't say, well, if he lost the weight the way he says he did, maybe there will be a situation if he misbehaves that the weight will suddenly reappear. And this is actually a fallacy that people think in the diet world. They think if I lost weight and then I have an off day and eat a jelly donut tomorrow, suddenly I will put all my pounds back on. That is a logical fallacy. It doesn't work that way. You don't gain fat by having one jelly donut. It doesn't work that way. The scientific physical world is non-debatable in its concrete laws and properties. Now, if you want to debate the metaphysics of science in reality, then it becomes highly debatable, right? There is a physical universe that I'm sitting in. Yet some will call it the real reality that I'm in is string theory. And there's all kind of scientific theories about the reality of this room that I'm sitting in. But there's a physical reality sitting in an office in Jerusalem right now, non-debatable. People can say on the internet, he's lying. He said he lived in Modin. It's called I moved. You can't deny reality. I am sitting in an office in Jerusalem right now. If I talk about the realm of Torah in any way, shape, or form, there's always going to be another opinion, another debate, another argument, because when I say metaphysical Torah, all Torah is metaphysical, all Torah is spiritual, all Torah is abstract. As physical as it may be to me, and provable to me, and concrete to me, to you or somebody else, it becomes highly debatable, highly questionable, and this is how you have religious discussions and arguments. There is not a unanimous understanding or view. You have in Orthodox Torah Judaism streams of Chabad, streams of Breslov, streams of Litvish, how to understand Rashi. Meaning this is called Pshat, and there are different Pshat to anything in Torah. You read Rashi that way, I read Rashi this way. Will we ever come to a consensus view of how to read Rashi, how to understand what words mean? There are 70 faces to the Torah. There is machlokes, there is Torah argument. Will the debate ever end? Can you prove anything that the whole world says, you know what, he proved it, I quit, game over? If that were true, Orthodox Judaism would have no competition from A, other streams of Judaism, B, streams of orthodoxy within Judaism, C, other religions. Torah is metaphysical. We are not saying that Ger or Ger Toshav Torah is metaphysical. All Torah is metaphysical. It just so happens that Ger is highly debatable and questioned by many people, because people go by the assumption Ger means convert, or the assumption there is no Ger Toshav today. So we then bring proof from text that Ger does not always mean convert. Ger Toshav outside of Jubilee does exist today. Yet we find people adamant Ger always means convert, and there is no Ger Toshav today. If there is no ger toshav today, and ger always means convert, why do we find in Dvarim 14:21, give the nevela to the ger in your gates, showing ger does not always mean convert, and that is a Torah verse that all the way through halacha is a halacha l'maisa. It's a real followed practice halacha today. If a Jew has non-kosher meat, he must give it to the ger in his gates, which is a ger toshav, which is a righteous non-Jew, one who has accepted the 7 laws, or sell it to the nachri, i.e., idolater or non-Jew who is considered an idolater. To me, these are provable, factual, even non-metaphysical statements. But we see that people will still debate them and argue them. The giving of the nevela only applies to a time of jubilee. Those, in my opinion, those that have learned the sugya know that halacha stands outside the land of Israel as much as inside the land of Israel. Yet people will debate and insist. Why? Because they have not researched and looked up that halacha to the extent that they know the answer. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If they are not going to research and look up the material to find their own truth in the matter, it remains metaphysical, it remains debatable, it remains even theoretical. But yet one who has researched it, it is not theoretical, it is not hypothetical, and it is absolutely practical and not metaphysical. The metaphysical comes from the aspect of where the sugya lives on. The parts of the sugya that beg more questions, that provide a medium of more research. And for every factual thing you prove in Torah, there will be somebody that will unprove it, unfactualize it by asking the very question. If it's a question to you, then apparently your research is not done. You must research and learn more and make a convincing, compelling argument that the other person would say, I see, there is a ger toshav today, or this halacha exists today. But until the entire Torah is in this world without debate or questioning, the Torah is metaphysical. And we know it remains metaphysical, because even if we prove it in this world, there's higher worlds, there's higher Kabbalistic realities. What does God's name mean? People don't even know what God's name or names mean. And those names have multiple meanings. And the Torah is endless. The Torah is a black fire on white fire. By definition, it is metaphysical. And we are trying to concretize and make non-metaphysical as much of it as we can to live a Torah lifestyle. For example, I put my right shoe on first every day. Concrete, grounded, not so metaphysical. But it remains related to the metaphysical because in its root, there are metaphysical extensions. Again, what if I can't put my right shoe on first for whatever reason? Now the Torah becomes alive again. It becomes debatable again. Will we put our right shoe on first in the time of the Messianic age? I don't know. We're not in the Messianic age to know. Does halacha change in the Messianic age? Yeah, like for example, we'll say in the future times we'll poskin like Beis Shammai and not like Beis Hillel. The holidays we keep, some go, some stay. We know there's changes in the Messianic era, but only a Messiah or Messianic era can tell us what that means. Why? How is it possible that things can elevate or expand our consciousness? Because the Torah is metaphysical. Weight loss is not metaphysical. Tangible, provable. I will not suddenly appear in someone's eyes as 130 kilos tomorrow. It is not possible. No one can debate that. Nobody can think that. And when I said that what made my weight loss possible was the tools and wisdom I learned from Ger, showing me personally that my work is true in Ger and not theoretical or metaphysical, because I applied them to the physical world and they worked with absolute success. So to me, Ger is absolutely proven and provable. But to those that refuse to do their research and to choose to remain in ignorance on this topic, it shows you that there are still elements of the metaphysical reality still at play here. And there will never be an absolute agreement in provable nature in Torah. Torah is spiritual, it is metaphysical. It will never change. There are parts of my diet that, as much as I'm grounded in physical, remain metaphysical. How my body chemistry reacts to sodium and carbohydrates making water retention. That's a metaphysical reality that I personally struggle with. I'm asking myself, how does my body work that on some days I eat this or this or this and I retain water, which makes an extra kilo or two appear on the scale. That is a metaphysical question in reality that I struggle with. But that has nothing to do with the tangible fact of a 60 to 65 kilogram weight loss. That is a metaphysical question of how the body works, which the body is created by the wisdom of God, and God is already esoteric and something metaphysical. My body is metaphysical. I don't understand my body, but my body can produce physical fact in reality that is not metaphysical. So again, everything has an aspect of metaphysical and not metaphysical. In the interview, I showed and proved that in my weight loss aspect of my life was a not metaphysical element that was brought about by the non-metaphysical aspects of my gear work. But as much as I can prove my weight loss, you cannot ultimately prove something in metaphysics. I can't prove that the reason why I have water retention on certain days is because of my carbohydrates and sodium intake. I think that, but I can't prove that. I see it every day. When I eat bread carbs with sodium, I tend to retain water. A scientist could come along and take me out of my metaphysical reality and say, no, you gained those 2 kilos overnight with water retention, or it wasn't water retention because of kacha. Then it would go out from metaphysical to a hardcore concrete reality, which would only beg more metaphysical questions. The weight loss itself was removed from metaphysical into the ultra-physical. To me, personally, ger is physical and not metaphysical. But there are those that want to keep it in the metaphysical because to them it is physical. There is no ger toshav today when there is no jubilee. And that's where the debate comes from. By the definition of the argument becomes metaphysical. What are we arguing about? I have a fact and you have a fact and we are arguing. It becomes a metaphysical argument. To me, my argument is very physical and not an argument, but is proven. To you, it is not an argument and it is provable in fact, yet we are arguing. It becomes metaphysical. How do we solve this metaphysical disagreement? I have not figured that out. Because today people argue ger toshav, they argue noahai, they argue religion, they argue politics, they argue money, they argue philosophy, they argue sports. Who's the greatest baseball team of all time? One can say take the team with the best record that won the World Series. Another person could argue another way. One can say it's a hardwired concrete fact this way. The other person says it's that way, and they both think they're right and have provable facts. Yet they're arguing, the argument shows it's a metaphysical question. Even though one may be right. Weight loss is not that. No one is sitting around arguing, did David Katz actually lose that weight? It's not debatable. It is an absolute fact. Therefore we see, if Torah is debatable, the root of Torah is, it is metaphysical. There are elements in Torah that are not metaphysical. And the point I was trying to make in the interview was my weight loss was a non-metaphysical reality that was brought about from my tools in ger toshav that I consider to be very factual, concrete, and not metaphysical, showing me that my work is true because they worked in the physical world. Yet people will still disagree, not with the weight loss, but how I learn and understand ger toshav. And again, to close off this point, where I want to know the metaphysical reality is, how do people ignore what I call fact in reality, and they have their fact in reality, and we are arguing something metaphysical, and that argument in the metaphysical is a Torah itself. Torah is metaphysical itself. And I do believe these things can be resolved, and they can become factual and physical, but they require cooperation and mutual discussion and communication to come to basically a consensus point of view, which you could call not literally halacha, but that's what halacha is. It's the consensus agreed upon physical fact view, which would only bring about more questions. I hope this sums up some things. And just to reiterate again, in the video I say that people have made many claims against me, that the sources are twisted. For example, I can make you think one way about Rashi and Tosfos, And you can say, that's not what Tosfos and Rashi said, you're twisting the source. And I can say to you, you have twisted and misunderstood Rashi and Tosfos. In the Ger world, there is this debate of who understands the sources correctly. I believe that I understand Rashi and Tosfos per se. That's an Iker term, Rashi and Tosfos. There's much more than Rashi and Tosfos. Correctly and yashar, straight and physical. And yet people say that's, Rabbi Katz is not saying what Rashi and Tosfos say. And I will look at your learning and perhaps say the same thing. Now it is a metaphysical discussion. Rashi and Tosfos is a metaphysical discussion, as all aspects of Torah are, because there are multiple ways of looking at it. Rashi and Tosfos can even have multiple meanings and definitions and ways of understanding. We call this in Brisk Tzvei Dinim. Right? There is a Ger Toshav that is a resident alien living in the land of Israel in the time of Jubilee. There is one of those. There are also other aspects of Ger Toshav. In Brisk, this is not a problem. We say there are more than one of any such thing in Halacha. One that does not subscribe to Brisk would have a problem with that and say, no, it must be one type of Ger Toshav, and what is that one kind, and does it exist today, yes or no? Most people would say no. In Brisk, we say there is one type of Ger Toshav that does not exist today, Tzvei Dinim. There's another kind of Ger Toshav, and actually many others that do exist today. By the fact that you can have one phrase or one word with multiple meanings and definitions shows that it is metaphysical. But if you take those tools in the metaphysics and utilize them in the physical world, it is my understanding and experience that it ratifies those concepts from metaphysical to physical if they produce and manifest physical results. And that's what I feel my weight loss has done. And that is my take on the matter. Not only Ger Torah is metaphysical, all Torah is metaphysical. And we strive to bring the Torah from 4D consciousness to 3D consciousness, which it exists in the matter of halacha, but halacha is always expanding and growing. And I'll give you an example. We look at a light bulb. The Torah did not mention light bulbs. Rabbis look at the incandescent light bulb and say, do we treat it as a rabbinic prohibition to turn a light bulb on Shabbos or biblical? And the answer is we look at an incandescent light bulb as a biblical prohibition to turn on Shabbos. It's a metaphysical halacha. The halacha follows the svara. It's hotter than fire, meaning a light bulb is more fire than fire. By definition, that is a metaphysical reality that we have brought into halacha. And there are those that argue that opinion and say it's not fire, it's actually building, or what's called bone. And people discuss and debate all the time. Will lab-grown meat be considered meat or parv, not meat? Would you be able to eat a cheeseburger if you lab-grew meat that was not born of a cow? Metaphysical Torah question. There are those that will say a lab-grown meat is meat and cannot be eaten with cheese. There are those that will say lab-grown meat is not meat and can be eaten with cheese. Metaphysical question to a metaphysical Torah. Can you eat a cheeseburger, a piece of kosher meat from a kosher cow with a kosher piece of cheese, hot? No. Everyone knows you cannot cook a kid in his mother's milk with all the laws that apply to that. Physical, halachic reality that was derived from a metaphysical Torah. Provable, nobody in the world would ever advocate eating a hot cheeseburger. But again, what if we raise the meat in a lab? Can we then eat a cheeseburger? And people will then discuss the question. Because Torah, even though it has physical elements in halacha, there are always the metaphysical elements in the halacha. There are physical aspects of ger and ger toshav. There are times that ger means convert. There are times ger does not mean convert, such as the ger negates eating nevela, physical, provable fact. Yet people still deny those facts. The deeper we go in the discussion, the more metaphysical it can become. And that's where Torah is a living document which would say, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chaim. These and these are the words of the living God. Torah will always have physical elements and metaphysical elements. But as long as the metaphysical is alive and well, people are free to debate and argue and philosophize, even with and against those opinions that appear to some people's eyes, or even most people's eyes, as concrete and fact. You can't end the debate. You can't end the discussion or argument What you can try to facilitate is a friendly discussion in Torah.